Hello friends, Mel Jeffcoat here. We are back for another episode talking about how to use Ramon Lull's system to understand all sorts of different ideas. So today we're going to continue analyzing the very first triangle of figure T. Let's just head on back to the computer so that you can see what I'm talking about. Here, as you will remember from previous videos, is figure T, which is really the engine of this whole system in that it allows you to analyze the relationships between different concepts in many different ways. And right now, we are just focusing on the first triangle, BCD, which I've made a simpler version of this to show only that portion of the triangle. Here it is. Last video, we talked about these different words around the outside, sensual and intellectual. And to recap, sensual just means something that you can experience with your senses. It's something that you can see or taste or touch or feel. That's the same thing as touch. Hear, anything like that. Something physical, something that you can experience. Sensual means an abstraction. And then we differentiated between sort of the first abstraction, which is an abstraction of a physical object of some sort, and then a second abstraction, which is an abstraction of an abstraction. So let's move on. In this video, we're going to talk about how to use this triangle with the outer level here of intellectual and intellectual. That means comparing two abstractions to each other and seeing where they are similar, where they're different, and where they might be contrary. Now, to do this, we are going to take a look at something called a Zettelkasten. Now, I'm not going to get into explaining the ins and outs of how a Zettelkasten works. You can Google it. I'll give you some links in the description for where you can get more information if you have no idea what I'm talking about. But I'm going to tell you enough to at least follow along. So a Zettelkasten is just a way to generate insights by capturing your thoughts on note cards and filing them. And the basic premise is that you file each thought closest to the thought that is most related to it. And you use an index to find where that would be. That's the basic gist of it. I actually am involved with 4 of my friends in a weekly video podcast discussion that we spend an entire hour every week discussing different elements of Zettelkastens. And not only is it the 5 of us, but we each have our own Zettelkasten. And the thing about these things is that as you add your own thoughts to it, it starts to get a personality of its own. And then you can interact with it because you're interacting with your past self, and it makes connections that you don't even realize that you had. So it almost becomes like another person. So we each have our 5 Zettelkastens, so there are actually 10 of us participating in this discussion. We don't all talk at once, fortunately. But I will also put a link to that in the description. So if you want to get lots of Zettelkasten content, that's the place to go. The idea of storing ideas and organizing them in some way is a very old thing that people have been wrestling with for centuries, actually. And there have been various attempts with commonplace books and various organizing systems to make a way to save your ideas and you still be able to find them. So a Zettelkasten comes from the work, as we know it now, comes from the work of a German sociologist named Niklas Luhmann. He had a Zettelkasten himself, and he was a prolific writer, and so because of the research and the writing that he did using his Zettelkasten, there has been interest since then, and a growing interest in recreating it for each of our individual selves. So there is a quote from Luhmann that ties in very well with this triangle of figure T, where you are comparing different ideas. So let's just pull that up. In an article that Luhmann wrote called Communicating with Slip Boxes, he wrote, "Information is an intrasystematic event. It results when one compares one message or entry with regard to other possibilities. Information, accordingly, originates only in systems which possess a comparative schema, even if this amounts only to this or something else." This quote right here is talking about his Zettelkasten, but you can also apply this to especially figure T of Ramon Lull's system, because when you are using this triangle of difference, concordance, and contrariety, it is a comparative schema of itself. So I thought, well, how can you use this system, this triangle, to work with a Zettelkasten? Since they are both comparative schemas and that produce information, you would think that they are compatible, and they are. So when one writes a card, here's an example of a note card. When you write a card that has an idea on it, your first step in the way that I and my friends use the Zettelkasten is to search through your index for your related cards as a possibility of where you're going to put it. And that search right there is making use of concordance. Come back to the triangle here. Concordance, because you are looking for related ideas. You are also using difference when you are searching through the index, because you are excluding all of the ideas that are not concordant. But in another sense, even the ideas that you pull out for being concordant, they're not going to be identical to your new card. You can hope that they're not identical, because that's kind of a waste of energy to just keep writing the same thing again and again. So these ideas that you pull out of your box that are possibilities, they're concordant because they're related, but they're also different. And so you're looking through them to find the sort of sweet spot where they are similar, but they're different enough to spark an insight. And remember, what you're doing here is you're comparing ideas. So that is why it falls under this outer ring of intellectual and intellectual. Now, how does contrariety fit in here? Well, there's a couple different ways that you can think about that I will talk about. There's probably more that I haven't even thought of. On a mundane level, when you make a decision of where you're going to place your new idea, you have excluded any other idea from sitting in that exact spot, because you give a unique number to every card. So once you've assigned that number, that's it. You know, that card has that number, no other card gets to have it, and that card doesn't get any other number. So that's a mundane example of contrariety, because it's exclusive. But a more interesting way to use contrariety is, instead of searching for the most concordant or a very concordant idea, you can look for a contrary one. Perhaps you've made a note of an idea that you have something that says the exact opposite already in your box. Well, you can file those cards right next to each other, and you can add an explanation nearby if you want, or you can just leave them to be mutually exclusive as a mystery to spark ideas later when you come across it again. That's up to you and your personality, but it can be very illuminating to file ideas that are contrary next to each other, and also to write about what part of each of them appeals to you and why you chose to put them in your box in the first place. So that's enough for tonight about comparing ideas with this triangle, with this BCD triangle, talking about difference, concordance, and contrariety. There are many, many, many ways that you could use this, but this is just one example. And tomorrow we will go into what it looks like to compare something physical with an idea. So until next time, keep exploring.